Hello and welcome to episode 68 of the Crash and Ride podcast. I'm Patrick Ferguson. I'm your host. Today's episode is part 2 of our interview with Brad Wood. Brad is, of course, the producer of the groundbreaking and revolutionary Liz Phair record Exile in Guyville. He also did records for Red Red Meat, Veruca Salt, Ben Lee, That Dog, Sunny Day Real Estate. I mean, the guy's resume is a mile long and 2 miles deep. One of the things that I forgot to mention in the intro to the first half of this interview is that Brad also plays in a band with James Fearnley, the accordionist and one of the founding members of the fucking Pogues, man. The Pogues. So that band is called Walker Roaders. They put a record out this year. They were supposed to tour. COVID kind of put the kibosh on that. But man, imagine playing with a member of the Pogues. Jesus. So as I said, this is the second half of our interview with Brad Wood. If you haven't heard the first half, episode 67, I would suggest going back and doing that. You're going to be really confused. As I record this, it is the afternoon of September 16th, 2020, 188th day of quarantine from the COVID-19 crisis. I hope everybody's hanging in there. A lot of musicians I know are barely hanging in there or not hanging in there at all at this point. Some of us were getting by on the pandemic unemployment assistance payments, which ended on July 31st, which means 6 weeks without any kind of income for a whole lot of musicians. I've been fairly fortunate, so I'm finding ways in my community to give back. If you are also someone who's been fortunate in all this and you still have a roof over your head and you still have beans in the cabinet and still have gas in the car, maybe have a look around in your community, figure out if there's some way you can help musicians, because I think that mutual aid is the only way we're going to get through this in one piece. If this is your first episode of Crash and Ride is a long-form interview podcast where I talk to musicians who've survived anxiety, depression, addiction, and trauma, and other forms of mental illness and mental distress. My idea was that if we could get together and have honest conversations and open conversations about the things that trouble us, we could start to recognize some of our sadness in others and start to get better. The podcast makes money in 2 or 3 ways, the predominant of which is that people support us through our Patreon page. Go to patreon.com/crashandride. You can make a $5 or $10 monthly donation there. It really helps us get by. And we also get by with some help from advertisers. Speaking of that, Crash and Ride is brought to you in part by Greer Amplification. Greer Amps builds the best boutique effects pedals available. If you're looking for an overdrive, boost, fuzz, compressor, or tremolo that is rugged, road-tested, and at home, on stage, in the studio, or in your living room, Greer has a pedal for you. Nick and his staff strive to build the best products around with the best tone you've ever heard. They believe in their products and they stand behind them too, backing each one up with a lifetime warranty to the original owner. Each Greer Amps product is hand-built in Athens, Georgia, USA. Go to www.greeramps.com or visit your favorite music retailer today. Crash and Ride is also brought to you in part by Jury Joe's, a local coffee roaster based here in Athens, Georgia. They have a special espresso blend named after the podcast. You can get Crash and Ride espresso whole bean or ground in cans from our website at crashandridepodcast.com. Or in COVID times, with everybody struggling to keep their doors open, especially small businesses, I would prefer that you get your Crash and Ride espresso from Seth Hendershot at Hendershots Coffee. Go to hendershotsathens.com. That's hendershotsathens.com. Man, I can't believe I can spell that off the top of my head that fast now. hendershotsathens.com has a web store. They sell the Crash and Ride espresso. You can get the Widespread Panic blend there. Widespread Panic, of course, is the great jam band from here in Athens, Georgia. You can get the Kishibashi blend there. Kishibashi is an indie rock band from here in Athens, Georgia, a really extraordinary band. Seth, the owner of Hendershots Coffee, used to be the drummer in Kishibashi. And that blend is a dark roast, which I'm kind of partial to because I'm a Gen X guy. And I would drink that probably every day if I wasn't drinking Crash and Ride espresso. In normal times, Hendershots is a lovely coffee shop. It's a great place to spend the day reading or writing or studying or hanging out and maybe planning to meet your future ex-wife or future ex-husband. At night, it's an outstanding live music venue with a really, really good sound man and a great stage. But that's in normal times. We don't live in normal times right now. Who knows if we'll ever live in normal times again. In the meantime, Seth Hendershot, who is, as I mentioned, a great drummer, great guy, amazing dad, runs a great little coffee shop. He's doing his best to keep the doors open and not have to lay anybody off. And part of the way he does that is by selling coffee and Hendershots merchandise off hendershotsathens.com. hendershotsathens.com. I'm getting better and better at that. Go to hendershotsathens.com, throw Seth a couple of bucks, and help keep live music alive in Athens, Georgia. Every penny you spend there helps support the Athens music scene one way or another. It either goes into payroll to support the musicians and writers and poets and painters and people who work at Hendershots pouring drinks or pulling espresso shots, or it helps Seth keep the doors open at a great live music venue that's just steps away from downtown Athens, Georgia. So hendershotsathens.com. One more thing before we jump into this interview. If you or someone you know is in distress, and a lot of us are in the current climate of incredible anxiety, massive distrust, and just fear all the time, you can call the National Alliance on Mental Illness at 1-800-950-6264. That's 1-800-950-NAMI between the hours of 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. That's 10 a.m., 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and you can get help there. Or you can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline if you're contemplating self-harm. If you're in a dark place, you need to talk to somebody. 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-TALK. That's 24/7, and they have trained volunteers to help you through your crisis. If you need help, please reach out. It's been a really tough time for a lot of people. All right, part 2 of my talk with Brad Wood. Man, what an interesting guy. So far we've talked about that first year out on the road with Liz Phair. We talked about his philosophy on what his job is as a producer in the studio. We talked about Jaco Pastorius and the role mania plays and becoming a great player, but how it can also be incredibly alienating. The second part, we talk about Brad's own battle with depression when they were building Idful Studios in Chicago, and how he kind of ground to a halt for a while there, and how his best friend sort of pulled him through it, which thank God for friends like that. I don't know where I'd be if I didn't have people like that in my life. We get into the 10 questions that I end every interview with, and believe it or not, we talk about bikes some more because we're fucking bike nerds. Sorry. We're both really into bikes. Once I get this edited and uploaded, I'm going to go for a ride on my bike because it's a beautiful, dark, cool day outside. Anyway, thanks for coming back for part 2. I hope you enjoyed as much as I enjoyed talking to Brad. Let's jump right in. You know, my friend Doug Grion, who was music director for Scott Weiland, used to live in Los Angeles, now living in upstate New York. He was talking about how just the change in the tax code in the last 5 years has affected his business model. Because it used to be that you'd have 4 or 5 guys, they worked in a coffee shop or whatever, something that allowed them to go on tour, and they'd get their tax return every year. And each guy would have $400, $500, $600, and they'd pool their money, and they'd come, and they'd block out a week and make a record. And, you know, people don't talk about this much, but like nobody's getting tax returns like that anymore because the tax code changed, and that layer of the economy, the service industry, is now getting taxed harder than it was before, and everybody's getting a couple $100 at the most. And like his studio business just plummeted. And so as we talk about the sort of end of potentially major label budgets for artists who are coming up, like where does that leave guys like you who have made an investment in incredible equipment, have a great resume, but like you can't just give your time away. You can't be like, yeah, let's I don't know, $100 a day. Like that's not feasible for Brad Wood. So like where is it at for you now?
It seems most years, for the last maybe 15 years, I'm touching a new bottom. I don't make nearly as much money as I used to, and I'm going to be 57 next year. And I don't know if that bothers me that much anymore. And I'll be really honest. The older I get and the more exposure I've had to family and friends and acquaintances who have made a lot of money in whatever industry or job they've got, the less enamored I am or convinced of money, and less convinced I am of the idea that having more than enough money for you and your family is even something you should want, which is a big evolution in thinking in my part. I'm pretty okay with making what I make as long as it doesn't drop below much more than where it's at. I don't earn as much as I used to. I work almost as much as I used to. So, what's been giving way is what I charge.
Sure.
To do the things that I do. And it used to really bug the crap out of me, to get paid 10 times less sometimes, to do the same task that I've been doing all this time. But a wage guarantee is rarely, given to any industry or any employee. It's a luxury, really. The idea of a guaranteed wage. We're freelancers. I say we, you, and me, and probably most people who are listening to the podcast. So if you get sick, you don't go to work, you don't get paid. I'm in the same boat. So, if I slip and fall and a pair of scissors goes into my ear and punctures my eardrum and I can't hear anything for 3 months, that's 3 months that I won't get paid.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if I don't go to work, I don't get paid. It's as simple as that. I like the imperative is on me. I have to get up and start doing things. And if I don't do things, I don't get money. There are some people out there who, if they have a bad week, and they got a job at a company, they can have a bad week, or they can be really sick, or they can just, they can be depressed, or they can take maternity or paternity leave sometimes, and they can come back from that leave and they can still have a job. And the best part is that while they've been out for family death or illness or their own illness, they still get paid, which is astonishing. Like, I don't understand how that works. Still never experienced that. So, I don't get paid as much as I used to get, but I've reduced my overhead, and I am more efficient than I used to be. I don't waste as much time, or maybe not waste time. I don't take as much time to do stuff. I don't know if I was wasting it so much. I don't take as much time to do the tasks that I'm supposed to do. And I'm not thinking about how much I'm making as much as I used to. I'm just, I'm trying to be more in the moment and focusing on other things that aren't income based, family mostly. Being a good parent is super, super important. Try to be a good spouse, but I'm an asshole, so that's that's kind of a problem. But I'm always working on that. But But part of it might just be rationalizing that. I'm just trying to rationalize my career failures. I'm not always earning more and more and more. I've been doing this for over 30 years. And if I were an accountant or in a law firm, I'd be a partner in that law firm, or I'd be retiring even. If I were like a firefighter or a police officer, I'd be getting a gold watch and a pension at this point. 30 years, a teacher, you'd be out, right?
Yeah.
So if I'd gotten my music education degree instead of a performance degree, I would be retired now, and I'd have a guaranteed pension in whatever state that I worked in, school system. And it might not be a ton of money, but it would be more than I would get if I were to stop working, just chose to work no more. Now I would get no money. So I'm trying to rationalize like the loss of income by saying, money doesn't really matter that much to me anymore. And I'm sure that's part of it. But I really kind of honestly have my doubts that being a millionaire is something that a person should aspire to, because I don't know many happy millionaires.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt before, but when you said that, like, the unhappiest families I know are families that have been blessed materially. It just seems to be one of those weird axioms of what's the old proverb? If you want to know what God thinks of money, look at who He gives it to. But I think that's a chicken and egg argument. Like, I think that, it's a struggle, I think, for people to stop worrying when they have a big pile of money. because it just goes away so easily. You know?
I don't know if I agree with that. I know some people who have more money than they'll ever be able to spend down, and so now that the switch has been turned off about, what'll I do for money? How can I afford to pay for food? How will my, bills get paid? Will the lights be turned off? Like, that's never going to be an issue for these people ever again. And they're pretty unhappy people because other stressful concerns now occupy that space, it seems. And, it seems like, happiness for me is less and less dependent on what I earn. And I'm finding myself thinking about that and worrying about that less. Maybe I've just got acclimated to it. But I'm also, I believe in the idea that when you really aren't worrying about a troublesome thing that you really don't have a lot of control over, that thing will sometimes fade away or actually get solved. One of the ways to get through a hard time is to acknowledge it and embrace it briefly, and then go about doing the things and accomplishing the things that you can do in the day that you've got left. And I'm getting better at that, and I try to espouse that to not just my kids, but in my sessions, where I'm working with sometimes with people who are super stressed out because they're juggling a lot of balls, and when they're in the studio with me, that means they're usually away from home. So there's home life that's been put on hold, and there's boyfriends and spouses that are grumbling, and kids that are being missed, or a dog that's, beloved and lonely.
Yeah.
And you know what, but you made this choice to be here, and what we're going to be doing is amazing, and you can't help your mom right now, like what you need to do is, or, you can't pet your dog, but what you can do is, let's have a snack and a drink of water, and we'll have a little stretch, and we'll go and we'll nail this guitar part, and just like, let's make a list of the things that are in your control that you can tackle. And that's really helpful. It's really a pragmatic way to look at how to manage your days. And I do that a lot with the artists I work with, but also I'm an old guy at this point, and everybody I work with is like, they could be my kids now. So, as I said earlier, I'm doing less like music related sort of helping and more just sort of life helping, I feel, These are strategies to sort of just cope.
Yeah. Well, you're continuing to do a lot of good work, and as you said, you're not doing any less of it. It's just, the industry's changed. But what do you do to sort of maintain just staying positive and staying out of the weeds with your depression and stuff?
Well, I was probably depressed. I was certainly depressed in my 20s, and that's kind of when it manifests for a lot of people, right? And I have a family history of depression on my mother's side, alcoholism on my dad's side. So, yeah, some pitfalls, like most of us have, of one kind or another. But depression has been around in my mom's side of the family. We've all had it to some degree, and some more serious mental health issues. So when I look back on my 20s, when Brian Deck and I were building our first recording studio, Idful Music, I now recognize some of my behavior as just collapsing, being in a trough of depression and despair. Like stereotype, clinical kind of thing, where I took to my bed and would not come out of it except to pee. and I wouldn't eat. I'd drink water. I would, splash some water in my face, and I would go back into bed. And I was restless and exhausted. I would sleep during the day and be, awake fitfully most of the night. And I would refuse to come back to the recording studio, which was under construction. Well, it's like the construction of that studio, which took about a year, which is about double the length it should have taken because we were inept. But it really did a number on me. And I think it was right around I was like 24 years old. My depression it was depression as I was suffering from. But my best friend, Brian Deck, bless his heart, he never let me go. I remember specifically one time in the middle of summer, we were building the studio, and I was in my bed with a sheet over my futon, and he came in and he just pulled the thing off, and he's like, "Wood, get up! We got to build this thing. We got to come back to the studio." Like we were still framing it and putting up drywall, and we were just so inept, and it was so overwhelming. Plus, I think my depression was starting to really manifest, really grab a hold of me. But Brian dragged me out of bed, literally. Here's coffee. Come on, let's go. There's donuts at the at the studio. Let's get back to it. I talked to him about it not too long ago, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that a couple of times." And wow, yeah, I guess maybe you might have been depressed. I don't know. I just thought you were lazy. My best friend Brian is an asshole, but he's a lovable asshole. But so I wasn't managing it all then. I was at the mercy of it. But we got that thing built, and I got really super, super busy, and I kept my job as a janitor at night while I was running the recording studio and being in a band. So I was just drinking gallons of coffee and then tons of beer, working 2-3 jobs, being in bands, just keeping myself so busy that there was really no downtime, and overscheduling myself, like within an hour of my day is usually how I historically have managed my depression. So if I don't have any time for any quiet time, then I've got too much responsibility to collapse. And that worked really, really, really well, flawlessly, supposedly, right? Until 2005. And then I just couldn't keep it. The wheels fell off the bus. I couldn't keep it rolling, and I collapsed, literally. Took to my bed, and I had to mix an album for a band on a major label, and we had to do it back in New York City. I couldn't do it. I could not get out of bed. I blew off the flight from LA to New York, and I eventually called the A&R guy, and I talked to my manager at the time and said, I think I'm depressed. And my wife had, confronted me about this. She's like, you can't do this. We've got like a 2-year-old and a 8-year-old. You are depressed. I haven't seen you like this. Like, what's going on? I'm like, I guess I am. So, I called the A&R guy to tell him that they were going to have to find someone else to mix, and that I couldn't finish the record. And he was so nice about it. His wife is clinically depressed, and he was like, he emailed me all these articles and all the information that they had about different kind of drug regimens. It was really great, And so I signed off on it and disengaged from it, and then got on an SSRI. It was Effexor first, which was horrible for me. I had a really bad reaction, and then was on Lexapro, and that's been my medication of choice. So that's how I manage it since 2005.
Yeah. So you're still doing the Effexor? I mean the Lexapro?
No, Lexapro.
Yeah. Still doing
yeah, I did. I was on, I forget how many, I was to say megabytes. I forget how many milligrams a day I was on then. I was 2005. I was taking quite a bit, pretty strong, Joe, like 50 maybe a day, 50 milligrams. Does that sound about right?
I don't know.
A whole pill?
Yeah.
Maybe it's 25. And I took that for a few years, and the side effects were like some pretty serious weight gain. And I was just kind of turning into a big fat happy cat, like happy just to sort of like, that's all right. Like I was pretty chill about stuff. And I got a little unhappy with the weight gain a couple years in. And then I started to talk to my doctor about possibly weaning myself off of it, but with a replacement for something else, because I didn't want to have that experience again of crashing so hard.
Yeah.
And being in a valley that I couldn't see a way out of. So I had a really good doctor, and he was helpful. And the decision was to wean myself off while getting back into either swimming or running or cycling. And I love cycling, like we talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. So I went out and I started doing a spin class just to sort of shock to the system to lose some weight. And I paid the money, so I couldn't get out of it. I had to go at 5:45 in the morning, and it was great. I lost a bunch of weight and was cycling like crazy. I'm like, man, I really want to get on a real bike and stop the station and everything. So I bought a cheap road bike in 2008, and man, I was riding 100 miles a week within a month, and eventually got off of Lexapro completely, and all the dopamine that I was cranking out, and adrenaline, and the high heart rate. I was like cycling like a maniac, and I loved it because I'm hanging out in the mountains and I'm meeting people who aren't in the music business, other adult men who aren't obsessed about music like I am, just meeting other guys that ride bikes, firefighters and waiters and stuff. They have all kinds of other jobs, but I was meeting a whole other social group and hanging out with other men, grown men, and doing a physical thing, like actual sport, which I'd never done. So that was really great too. And I'd go on group rides twice a week, usually a Sunday and a Friday morning ride 40 miles and climb 4,000 or 5,000 feet. And you get to know these guys after a year or two of doing this. And I really liked what my body was, how it was responding. And of course the brain response was wonderful. But life is, evolving and not static. So, I think, 2013, I had reason to not ride at the end of that year, just family matters and stuff, like sick parents and stuff like that. So I got out of the habit, and it was kind of nice, a little burnt out after that many thousands of miles of riding. and I stayed off the Lexapro. I hadn't been taking it since 2009. And man, it took till about 2014. It took about a year for the benefits of all those years of being essentially an endurance athlete to wear off. And I found myself not in the super deep hole, but I recognized it. And so did my wife. And, she's like, yeah, and better go talk to your doctor. So I renewed my prescription, and I've been on 5 milligrams of Lexapro since then, which is like a quarter of a pill. I break each pill up into 4 pieces, and I manage quite well, and I'm riding again. So not like a maniac, but I may get to that again. But that's how I manage. And I have a talk therapist that I reach out to a couple times a year, or if there's some sort of crisis, again, a death of a friend or a family member, or, sick dog, or crazy president, who does something really, and I need a little tune-up, I'll call her. And she's awesome. She's been my therapist since 2009, but I don't really regularly see her, but I bounce ideas off of her that are, thoughts and ideas that would be, too much burden for my wife or for a close friend. Like I don't want to put anybody through anybody other than a trained professional through, like, every single idiot idea that comes into my head. And
I want to introduce you to my friend Ben Adrian.
I know Ben.
You know Ben from Line 6, Ben.
Hell yeah, we've ridden a few times.
No shit. He's one of my favorite people.
Yeah. Man, he's a cool dude.
Isn't he?
He's talented too, man.
Another Midwestern guy.
Yeah, I saw his band play.
Yeah.
Pajo played a gig at a bowling alley, and Ben's band played, and it was the last music I saw before quarantine hit. It was like the weekend before or something like that, or a couple weeks before.
Oh, shit.
But then we rode a couple months later, after the quarantine sort of seemed like we were, safe to ride. And he's an avid cyclist and he's doing more climbing than I'm able to do. But at my prime, I think I would have been a good match for him. But we're not equals on the road right now. He's I don't want to slow him down. He's really soft pedaling it with me when he rides. But we're supposed to ride maybe in the next week or two because I'm back on it and I'm determined to. I'm going to kick young Ben's ass is what I'm going to do.
Man, right now, I don't think there's anything I want to do more than like get back in shape and come ride bikes with you guys in the mountains. That would make me so fucking happy.
Hell yeah, man. It is really nice. I rode, let's see, 20, 26, 23, and 26. So what is that? About 100 miles this week. And that's the first time I've done that since 2013. I've got all kinds of strategies in my life to motivate me to do stuff. I'm assuming we all do. So sometimes it's buy a new piece of gear or a new piece of software to sort of like re-energize my interest in my job, right?
Yeah.
But that's also kind of self-renewing because oftentimes the new thing is the client, and the new thing is also the music that no one else has ever heard. So there's a element of self-renewal there, it's always fresh in that regard. Like I've never recorded this person. I've never heard this song. I've never, I've never recorded this assemblage of musicians before. So there's always something new there. But when it comes to, taking care of my health, sometimes I got to buy that new pair of shoes, man,
Yeah.
New set of wheels. It's weird, but it's a motivator. Like these tactile changes, the way that a helmet, feels on your head, gets you excited. You like the way it looks. Even sometimes it's just aesthetics. So I've got these new wheels that I really love the sound of. The carbon rims, sound different, and the brake material the brake track sounds different when you apply the brakes. And the free hub on the rear has a totally different tick, tick, tick sound when you're coasting.
Yeah.
It's almost silent. I try not to discount these little things now that I've been living with myself all these years. I devise strategies to sort of trick myself into doing a good thing for myself or a good thing in general. Avoiding, sloth or whatever else, procrastination.
I've been eyeballing a gravel bike just because, like, I've been mountain biking for years and I tend to push too hard. Not uncommon for drummers, I think, and then come home bleeding. And,
yeah.
The road bike thing's so dangerous here because, of all the road rage stuff with the redneck dudes. So gravel seems to be the option.
Gravel.
Yeah, gravel, you get in the road bike style workout, but not anywhere you got to deal with, like commuter traffic. Hey, Crash and Ride would like to let you know about a new industry-wide initiative focused on mental health called Backline. Backline is a hub for artists, industry professionals, and their families to quickly and easily access mental health and wellness resources. Backline has partnered with leading support organizations and care providers to streamline access to services specifically geared towards the music industry. Go to www.backline.care to get the support that you need to thrive both on and off the road. The way that Backline works is you contact them via their website or their 800 number, and they will connect you with a caseworker. That caseworker will be familiar with resources in your area to get you the mental health care that you need. If you need to talk to a therapist, they can put you in touch with a therapist. If you need to talk to a psychiatrist and be evaluated for meds, they have a list of psychiatrists. They have resources for inpatient therapy. They can put you in touch with sober companions. If you need someone to travel with you while you're on the road to help you stay out of trouble, Backline is a really end-to-end comprehensive solution for people who are struggling in the music industry. Now, a little closer to home, if you're in the Athens, Georgia area and you're a musician struggling with anxiety and depression, you can contact Nucci Space at 706-227-1515 or go to nuci.org. That's nucci.org. Nucci Space is a nonprofit musicians resource focused on suicide prevention. Here's how Nucci's works. If you contact them and you say, hey, look, I'm in crisis, whether you're a musician or not, they'll connect you with resources in the Athens, Georgia area. If you're a musician, that health care will be subsidized. In my own case, I was able to see a counselor for $15 or $20 a session. If you're not a musician, they'll do their best to connect you with low-cost or sliding scale options for mental health care in Athens. Nucci Space provides a lot of resources for musicians in the Athens area. They have low-cost practice spaces. They have a gear sale where they're constantly selling secondhand gear. They've got a low-cost recording studio. They're really just an amazing asset to the Athens, Georgia music scene, but their primary mission is helping people who are depressed or anxious get better. Go to nuci.org, that's nucci.org, or call 706-227-1515. And finally, no matter where you are, if you're struggling with anxiety and depression and you're contemplating self-harm, you can always call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-TALK. It's 24/7. It's free. It's confidential. They have trained volunteers to help get you through your crisis and get you the help that you need. Call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Well, man, you've heard a few of these, so you know how we wind up, right? We have 10 questions.
Yeah.
You got time?
Yeah.
All right. What is the fondest memory of a meal that you've had?
I've had a lot of really good meals, right? And I've heard you ask this question, so it's not a shock to me to hear this, although I don't know if I know all the questions that you might ask. But the meal question, and that's a super easy one for me to answer because it was after a bike ride, and I was on a Paul Love Across America week-long charity ride, and that's a pediatric cancer research nonprofit based here in Los Angeles, and we had finished a 106-mile ride. Ooh. And I was a broken man when I arrived at the hotel. We were riding from what was it? I think we were riding. It was a day we rode into San Francisco, so we climbed Mount Tam. It was 106 miles to get to south of San Francisco to where our destination was that night. And you pull up in the parking lot and you get off your bike, and I put together. They had a table full of like cold cuts, ham and cheese and lettuce. Just get some food in you because you burnt 4,000 or 5,000 calories and climbed 10 or 12,000 feet and been riding for 9 hours or something insane like that. Yeah. And I put together this sandwich on plain old wheat bread and some Costco ham, and there was a slice of cheddar cheese and some tomato and a bunch of lettuce and some red onion, and I put a little mayo on there, and it was the best thing I've ever eaten. It was glorious. This bargain basement, sandwich. Mm-hmm. And then but it was great because my body was depleted, yeah. and it was like a starving man having his first meal. It was amazing, and I loved it. I'll always remember it. And it was a beautiful late afternoon, the breeze coming off the ocean, and clear blue sky. And it had been a really long, hard day for me, at least on the bike. It's a lot of miles for me. Yeah. And then the second best meal I've ever had was at the end of another Pablo's Across America ride. And we rode into New Orleans to end that week's ride. Oh, and it was, I think, 98 miles or something. And we rode through the streets of New Orleans to the Children's Hospital there. and met some of the kids in the cancer ward and took a bunch of pictures, and then checked into a hotel. I got into a cab, broke my bike down and put it in a box, and I got into a cab, went to my hotel, and then before we had met up for our dinner, I walked over to Casamento's, which is this famous restaurant in Uptown, right?
Yeah.
Upland? Wait,
Uptown. Yeah.
And I've eaten at Casamento's before, but I've never eaten at Casamento's when I was starving after almost a 100-mile ride. And I sat there, and I think I ate like 6 dozen shucked oysters. I sat there at the bar, and I ate all these oysters, and I ordered a shrimp po' boy sandwich, and I drank 2 Dixie beers, and I went home and I went to the hotel room and took a nap. And then I went over to a house where they were throwing a party for everybody, the crew and the riders. And then I ate another full meal there, like at 8 o'clock. But so that's my first, second, and third meals. They all have to do with riding a bike. I could have been eating anything, but yeah, there you go.
Casamento's, outstanding.
So there's my answers to that.
Yeah. So what's the most frightened you've ever been?
Casey Rice and Andy Bryant and I all worked at Idful Music Corporation in the 80s and 90s. And one night in February, I'm going to say 1994, it was a really warm night, a warm day and a warm night. Like it suddenly warmed up in Chicago, and the snow was melting, and it was like 68 degrees out. It was strange, like warm front had come through. And we finished work late, and we walked down the street past Wicker Park to the Rainbow, and we heard people out on the streets. We heard like people whistling and calling to each other, like ha, these weird sounds. We didn't really know what it meant. We just thought people were just kind of wilding out because it's a strange night. And the bar was packed. We got a drink there, but it was too busy, too smoky. So we walked another block away to the Intertown Pub on Winchester in Wicker Park. And we noticed that the street lights on that street were out. Somebody had shot them out. And we left there after a while, and we're walking down Winchester to go to Casey's house, probably to smoke a joint. And we saw some kids walking towards us, and they were there to mug us. And Casey and Andy got away, but these 4 guys who were teenagers, because they were like 13, 14 years old, I swear, they were taking turns kind of beating on me as I walked towards Division Street, where there were streetlights and where Casey was standing, sort of trying to hail a police car or get some attention. And one of these guys had a gun and was holding it on me and walking with these other guys as they were taking turns punching me and knocking me down. They weren't there to like steal my money. They were doing this because there's a gang initiation going on all around the city with Latin Kings. Found out about this later. And they were beating my ass. And eventually I stopped moving. I kept saying, stop hitting me, and I just was trying to keep moving. And they were beating the crap out of me. And eventually I fell down to my knees, and this guy put the gun to my forehead, and I thought that he was going to blow my brains out. So that's the most scared I've ever been. And what he did is he laughed and ran off. So there's that answer.
Yeah.
Scared the shit out of me. And I was just thinking, this is how I'm going to die. And I'm like, you don't have to do this. You don't have to shoot me. And they're like, bust a cap in him, man, shoot his ass, and he stopped. He just pulled it off my forehead. Sucked.
So I don't want to derail this discussion too much, but I was attacked once by 5 guys in a similar situation. And I was probably angry for 5 years. and just never was able to let go of it for a long time.
How did you get over it?
I don't know. I changed locations. I got out of that town. And, it wasn't really about me. I was just a random white guy, And, yeah. Did you struggle with any PTSD from that or anger or anything?
I don't think so. I ran towards, I kept moving. Eventually I got up and kept moving, and the kids, Casey had a traffic cone, like a yellow, construction cone that was on the street. Mm-hmm. And he was swinging it around trying to get their attention or anybody's attention. He was on the corner of Winchester and Division. And also, trying to protect himself. But once I got close enough to the light, they just ran off. So then he and I ran to his apartment, which is across the street from the Rainbow, which is the first bar we went to. And the adrenaline was starting to wear off. And then I really started to be in pain. Like these kids couldn't even hit. Like there was nothing. I was thinking, man, I should get into fights more often because I don't feel pain. Right. And then like a couple minutes later, I was in agony, and I had like a shiner, and my back really hurt a lot because they were pounding on my back, and they put their arms around my neck and tried to drag me down. So my neck was like, sore. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, Casey was calling over to the Rainbow to say, hey, and called the Intertown pub to say, watch out, they're jumping people out there. And by then they'd already gotten the news. Like, yeah, a bunch of patrons have been getting mugged, like all around the area. And it actually made the papers, not me being attacked, but that there was like suddenly white people in these neighborhoods like Wicker Park and Humboldt Park were suddenly no longer invisible, and we were attacked as part of, like, I guess, a gang initiation thing. Generally, when I lived in Chicago, I felt unseen because I wasn't really a part of their world. These guys are living their own lives, own families, their own social world. And if anything, I'm just annoying, harbinger of the future gentrification to come. But for that night, I was singled out. And they let Andy go when he was one of the guys that was with us. Andy got caught and tripped up, and they were starting to beat on him, and they realized that he wasn't white. He was Korean. And they let him go. Casey was faster than everybody. He got away. But to answer your question, no, I think because so many other people got attacked, it made, I don't know, maybe it made a difference in how I perceived it. It really wasn't about me, Yeah. And in the end, I don't know. I don't really think I had PTSD. Wasn't particularly nervous being even on that same street multiple times after that. It just was sort of what sometimes happened in Chicago. I don't know. It wasn't the first time I'd been attacked. It was just the scariest.
I got my hands on a really big fuck-off switchblade not too long after that happened, and I went everywhere with it. I went to school with it, which was the kind of thing that you could be expelled for the rest of your life for having. But I went everywhere with it. And then, like, a year and a half later, I got attacked again, but it was just one guy, and I just happened to walk into a situation where he and another guy were attacking a third guy, and I walked into it just blithely into a situation and distracted the two guys enough that the third guy was able to get away. And so I got pushed and punched, and I thought, I'm gonna stab this dude, and I'm gonna fucking kill him. And then I thought, nah,
jeez,
I'm just gonna get the fuck away. So I sort of rolled out of there, and they didn't chase me. If they chased me, I don't know what would have happened. But the switchblade never came out of my pocket. And
do you think having it on you, even though you didn't have to use it ever, helped you? get through and cope?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I just felt so powerless getting jumped by 5 guys and beaten unconscious that I thought, that's not going to happen to me again. I'll kill someone first. And then, I mean, the town I grew up in Columbus, Georgia, is really rough. Not so much now as it used to be, but it was a mill town and a military town at the same time, and so it was pretty blue collar. And I had 2 friends that I went to high school with who ended up on death row in Georgia, at the state penitentiary. So, like, it was just rough. And
wow.
So it's what's fucked up is years later, after that night where I didn't stab the guy, I have never talked about this to anybody, so this is a big night of revelations. After that night, I stopped going everywhere with it. I realized I didn't want to stab anybody. Like, I had an opportunity and would have been perfectly within my rights to drive that thing into that guy's lungs, and I decided not to. And thought, I don't want to be that dude, you know.
You made the right decision, because that's how a lot of things go, you know, pear-shaped.
Yeah. I mean,
and it's part, you know, it's one of the arguments for not having lethal weapons on you or in your house.
Yeah.
There's arguments to be made both ways, but the rationale that I live by and will probably continue to live by is stay away from guns. Keep them away from you. You know, just like don't have them on you or in your house, and try not to cohabitate with people who like to have them around, because the odds go up that gun's going to get used, you know, against you, or you're going to use it. That's how I feel about it. You know, we live in a country where you can make that decision for yourself, but
yeah,
I sleep better at night knowing there's not a gun in my house. I mean, we got plenty of knives, so I could get stabby if I really needed to, but
yeah,
I just don't know if that's in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I'm glad it worked out for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't thought about that in years. The guy that eventually there was a police report filed because they pursued the guy that they were trying to beat up. It was a huge crowd of people. It was something happened.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar situation you're talking about. A warm night and a cool time of year, and like a bunch of people that gathered in the park, and some shit broke out, and they chased this guy all the way back to his house on the projects. It's probably his mom's house. And the police came,
mm-hmm.
and then someone who knew me had seen all this, and they were like, well, they beat up Patrick Ferguson, and the cops, well, for various reasons, knew where I lived because I was kind of a juvenile delinquent. But so they came to my house, and they drove me down to the house where the guy who'd been chased was, and apparently the guy who I had not stabbed was hiding in the ditch, but nobody was going to tell the police because this guy's there was a big, Columbus has these big sort of drainage ditches that sort of crisscross the town like canals, and this guy dropped down in there when he knew the police were coming, and he was hiding there. But so they took my name, they took a statement, and sent me home. And then like a year and a half later, I was asked to come testify about what had happened to me at this guy's murder trial for someone else he killed. So,
wow.
Yeah, Columbus was fucking wild.
It's heavy.
Yeah. I don't know what happened to that guy after that. I'm sure he got... I didn't actually say anything in court because I think his lawyer pled guilty, and there was no need for me to say anything. Next question.
Yeah. You're okay.
What is the thing in your life that you've lost that you regret losing the most?
The years of an adult relationship with my sister.
Yeah.
She was probably my best friend when we were kids. At least that's how I looked at it.
Mm-hmm.
She's 5 years older than me, and we were just buddies. We got along really well, and she was a great sister because she would, let her stupid kid brother tag along.
Yeah.
And we had I thought, a really great relationship until we got into our 20s, and then things, got difficult for a variety of reasons. And I don't really know her anymore. I haven't known her for a long time. And I regret that almost every day. Yeah. And that's time we can't get back. So that's something I really regret.
Tell me about a time you received an act of kindness from a stranger.
I had a Renault car, which, if your listeners are under the age of 50, they probably won't know what a Renault car is, but it's a French car, two-door little hatchback. Looks sort of like a Mini Cooper or a Pinto. And I had one. I loved it. And I was driving it from Chicago to Rockford to visit my dad. And it was maybe January or February, and it was, record-breaking cold, 20 degrees below zero with like a even crazier wind chill factor. And I'm driving along in the late afternoon. The sun's going down early on I-90, heading west, and the car on this freeway suddenly just shuts down. And I just coast to a stop on the shoulder on the right-hand side. And the wind's howling, and there's no electricity. The engine won't turn over. It just stopped working. So I get out, and it's like rush hour traffic, like 4:30 in the afternoon. It's just before it gets dark. And I'm waving at anybody to stop, but nobody will stop. Like hundreds of cars go by. And I'm getting really cold. I had a hat on and a parka and gloves and boots. I'm not an idiot. I've lived in the Midwest my whole life. And I can see that nobody's going to stop. And I'm thinking, why won't they stop? And I see people looking at me as they drive by, zoom past at 55 miles an hour. But I can see there's a farmhouse across a field, so I think I better go over there. Crap, that's a long walk. And I'm walking through this frozen field, and it's a cornfield, so there's deep furrows, and I'm like slipping and falling. And I'm laughing to myself like, I'm gonna fucking freeze to death out here. And there's like hundreds of people who pass me, and they're gonna read about me tomorrow and go, oh yeah, there's that asshole that like died on the I-90. I'll be the guy that froze to death on the I-90 because people weren't kind enough to stop. And so I'll prove to them I'll get across this field, and the field it just took forever. And I got to this farmhouse, and the lights are on in the kitchen, and I can see a woman cooking dinner, and my hands are so froze I can't ring the doorbell, so I just had to bang on the storm door, and bang, 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 and I can see her through the window in the, in the living room into the kitchen, and she comes over and into the darker living room, and she sees me through her window. She turns around, goes into her kitchen, and turns off the light, and like pretends she's not there. And I'm shouting, "I can see you in there! It's so cold!" And the sun has gone down, and I'm banging on her door, and there's no other buildings around, right? And I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm going to have to walk back to the freeway, to the interstate." And I stumble, and I'm having trouble breathing this time, and I'm starting to like fantasize that I'm actually really warm. And I ended up back at the car, and I was on my knees on the side of the road, almost in traffic, and I could no longer raise my arms over my head. And I thought I was just going to pass out, and it was going to be okay. And a UPS driver driving a double trailer pulled over, like roared past me, hit his brakes and pulled over, and then ran to me. And I had lost my hat as I was running, walking back across this field. So I had no hat on my head. And my hands were too cold or frozen my fingers wouldn't work to put the hat back on. So I just left the hat in the field. So I had no hat on my head. And this guy's UPS, like snowsuit on, brown. He's got his UPS hat. And he takes it off, and he puts it on my head, and he helps me to my feet, basically drags me and puts me up into this semi, in the passenger seat, and checks me out. And he's on the radio, he's like, and I can't talk. I'm like going, my jaw is frozen. I was like in shock. Couldn't believe how frozen I was. And I started to cry, and he's like, "You're going to be all right, buddy. Now, where do you live?" I'm like, I couldn't talk. He's like, "Well, I'm going to take you to the Marengo truck stop. It's a Phillips 76 truck stop, and I'll pull over there, and we'll, maybe you'll thaw out by then." And he's like, "I'm not supposed to do this. I can lose my job for doing this. This is against rules to like stop and take a passenger. But you look like you're in real trouble." And I was like trying to nod my head, and he's talking. He's got the heat on full. And we get to the truck stop, and by then I'm pretty thawed out, and I make a collect call to my dad in Rockford and tell him what's going on. And he gets in his, pickup truck, Suburban, heads on out. And this guy stayed with me. I didn't bring my wallet with me because it was in the car. And that guy bought me a bowl of soup and a cup of coffee at the diner and sat there with me till my dad showed up. And I wasn't like a kid. I was in like my late 20s. And but I almost froze to death. And I never got this guy's name. He told me to keep the hat, which I still have.
No shit.
Brown UPS hat. My older daughter has it now. And I told her that, she asked if she could have it, and I said yes, but you cannot lose it. That's the nicest thing a stranger's ever done for me. He saved my life.
Yeah, man, that's amazing.
And my dad, there was a truck and car repair, like towing service at this station. So we got on the freeway with the tow truck and my dad's truck. We went to my car, and they towed it in to the station, and my battery had frozen.
That's what I was going to guess.
And it fused. Yeah. It froze solid. Yeah. And so it arced, and it took out my whole electronic system. It blew the whole electrical system. Mm-hmm. That guy saved my life, and no doubt I would have expired. And it really shook me. And to this day, it was a lesson in how casually cruel people can be when they're in a car, especially, or in their house. Like, fear of strangers, especially in the Midwest, is dangerous.
Man. Did your car have the red, white, and blue stripes?
No, man, this one was a silver one.
Yeah.
I'd had a red one before that, but I had a girlfriend who wrecked that one. And so I used that for parts, and I bought the silver one for $450. It was silver, but it had that cloth sunroof that opened up like a tin can.
Oh, yeah.
I love that car.
Yeah.
Fun car.
Well, so the next question is usually aimed at people who are still touring or gigging, but I know you've done a couple of years of that. But Richard Salino, who's also a studio engineer, when I asked him this question, I offered him the option of, instead of answering, "What's your favorite place to gig?" or "What's your favorite place to track?"
Favorite place to track? Ooh. Well, there's so many great recording studios that I've had the pleasure of working at. As far as a technical experience, can I compartmentalize it so I can give you more than one place?
Of course.
I made a record at Monmouth Studios in Wales, Monmouth, Wales, mm-hmm. and in 2017, and that was a phenomenal experience. And that's a studio that's been around since the mid '80s, and had a lot of rock stars there, Oasis and big bands that worked there. And I worked with a Welsh band that lived not too far from there. That was October of 2017, and we had 3 weeks to track everything. Actually, less than 3 weeks. But it was a residential farmhouse built in the 1700s, or even older than that. And they've been converted into a recording studio and residential apartments and beautiful grounds, farmland, way away from everything, with a babbling brook that ran past it. And they had a beautiful old kitchen, and there was a cook that would come in and cook us dinner every night, and would always use locally sourced vegetables and the occasional meat. They always made a vegan option too. And I ate really, really well. And it was a really restorative session to be in this fresh fall air, in a place that was just so dead quiet, no light at night, just the stars. It was really lovely. So that was that's probably one of my favorite places. I think they're going to close it down now. I think reading where they were for sale, and I think they've had trouble finding a buyer. But that can change fast, so maybe it'll still be available.
Have you worked at Black Box?
No.
That's sort of equivalent of the French countryside.
Oh yeah, no, I've heard of it. I've not worked there though. But I also worked at some other great studios. But that's the one that really sticks with me right now. Compass Point in the Bahamas. That no longer exists either. We went there with Casey and Liz to work on Liz Phair's Whip Smart album. Mm-hmm. And we spent 2 or so weeks there, just glorious, drinking local rum and eating great seafood and hanging out with some of the nicest people that have ever lived, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Terry and Sherry Manning and Ozzy and the staff that worked there. And just walking at night past Gambier Village to, it was a Wrestler's Roost, I think it's called. Mm-hmm. Just a little tiny outdoor open air restaurant that had been around since like the 1930s. Just soaking in the local scene and hanging out and getting Terry Manning to tell us stories about all the great records he worked on. That was a great time, but I can't go back to that place. So,
Yeah.
But as far as gigging as a musician, I got to say CBGB's, man. Come on.
I've played CB's before I was legally old enough to walk in the front door. I played there when I was 20. And Hilly Crystal, I was a young looking 20. Like, he saw me coming. He was like,
"Yeah,
hey kid, I need to see your fucking ID." And I was like, "Hold on, it's in the van." And I turned around. I had the guitar in each hand. And as soon as he looked down at his newspaper, I just backed into the club.
That's great.
Stepping over the dog shit because his dogs are there, like.
Yep. Yeah, he was still there when we played.
Yeah, CB's was experience.
I played there with Shrimp Boat and with Liz.
Yeah.
And loved it every time. I went there in the 80s just to see music. My uncle lived in New York City for decades, and so I used to visit him pretty regularly. And that was one of the places that I made sure I got to.
Yeah.
So I can't remember who I saw there, though, unfortunately. But I was pretty intimidated. But by the time I made it back there, it was a goal, to be in a band that could actually get a gig there. And as I mentioned earlier, I hadn't always been in bands that would ever, get a chance to stand on that little stage.
Right.
But eventually I was. And I think I might have been more proud the first time with Shrimp Boat because we were, an unheralded band by comparison to Liz Phair's band. Mm-hmm. But, man, it was great. I just soaked it in. I mean, literally, because you'd soak stuff in when you're at CC. But I just loved it. I loved it. I liked the fact that the PA was really fucking loud.
Yes.
And it didn't sound bad, but it was not a forgiving sound. It was aggressive and harsh. And I liked the way band sounded there. And I went there plenty of times for C&J, New Music Seminar, as a record producer, just going as an industry schmo. and going and seeing whatever band play. I've seen a lot of bands there, but playing there, man, I mean, that was hallowed ground as far as I was concerned.
Are there, like, so you set that goal, play at CBGB's. Were there other clubs in America that you were like, I want to play there before it's all said and done?
Sure. Troubadour, of course, right?
Yeah.
Played there with, I don't think Shrimp Boat played there, but definitely with Liz more than once. I think I might have jumped on stage with Ben Lee once. And then I played a gig with the Fire Theft. I was the keyboard player for a couple of the very first couple Fire Theft shows in 2003, I think. And I fucked up really badly one song. We had to restart. Yeah, that's all right. So Troubadour for sure. What's the name of the big the theater? Is it the Warwick in San Francisco?
Oh. Yeah, I think so.
Bill Graham Presents,
Yeah.
or the Fillmore or whatever.
Yes,
yeah, I think we played the Warwick or was it the Fillmore we played with Liz, or maybe it was the Warwick or American Music Hall. And then the Khyber Pass, man, in Philly.
Yeah.
Can't forget that. And Stashes in Columbus.
I played Khyber Pass at Philly the night the Braves lost to the Phillies for the pennant. It was pretty crushing for me.
That must have been rough.
Oh man.
Also, TT the Bears in Boston, played there. That was an important place to play. And the Rat, played the Rat in Boston. That was cool.
Yeah.
A lot of that was Shrimp Boat. We ground our way through the East Coast and the Midwest pretty effectively. Stashes in Columbus, that was cool. Obviously Chicago Metro. As much as I love the women who owned Lounge Acts, I never enjoyed playing there. I didn't like the room, didn't like the venue. I didn't like the sound on the stage. Played with a bunch of different bands over the years. I mean, it was a hometown club. Yeah. And then Phyllis's Musical Inn in Chicago, which is still going. That was home base for Shrimp Boat. Yeah. Probably played it 100 times in Shrimp Boat. So those are kind of legendary, Metro and Lounge Acts and Phyllis's. Played a lot of gigs, man. I mean,
yeah, sounds like it.
Never really got that big, like I never got to play in front of a stadium, I mean, maybe I will someday, but the odds are pretty slim at this point. But let's see, I sat in with Tortoise when they were touring with Stereolab in 1996 at a theater in Dublin. That was cool. But then was it at the O2? Was it in London? I did the same thing.
Oh, cool. Was Pajo with them then?
Yeah.
I walked downstairs at Lounge Acts into the dressing room area the time we played there, and there was a cherry red set of Ludwig Vista lights at the bottom of the stairs. And I was like,
wow,
man, I love these drums. And somebody was like, oh, they're Sue, who owns the place. I was like, what? And I never met Sue Miller, but I developed a kind of little crush on her because of her fucking cool drums. I didn't know she was going to go on to marry the dude from Uncle Tupelo. That's a whole other...
Tweety?
Yeah.
She and Tweety have a couple of great songs, and I've been together a long time now. Yeah, well, you get in line. You're not the first man or woman to have a crush on Sue Miller. Come on.
I couldn't pick her out of a lineup, but man, she had the coolest set of drums I'd ever seen. So
cool people usually have cool drums, and Sue is definitely a cool person. So.
Yeah.
But man, I've been really blessed to not only be a record producer, but to have been, a musician still and able to play on occasion. It's and to play these venues, man. It's fantastic. I'm not a road dog at this point. I was at an early age, played like hundreds and hundreds of gigs, but anonymous gigs, horrible wedding, banquet halls and VFW halls and, Night to Columbus rooms and gymnasiums at high school dances. But the funny thing is, where I grew up, in Rockford especially, you'd go play the Harlem High School senior prom, and the principal would be saying, yeah, Chief Trick played here 5 years ago with Molly Hatchet opening.
Yeah.
Well, sure. Yeah. Okay. What was they playing the prom? No, they're just playing like a high school dance, just the gymnasium. Really? I mean, that was only like a couple years before Budokan came out. A room with a PA and place to put people is all you needed back then,
Yeah, there's a producer here, has a studio. His name's Jim Hawkins, and he recorded live at Fillmore East. He was the guy on the sound truck, actually placing microphones and tracking all the Almond stuff.
Yeah.
And he was also the guy who set up the studio in the big house when they recorded Idle Wild South. And his stories about Allman Brothers touring are so terrifying, like the vagaries of PA and like risk of electric shock and like, and the like predatory Southern law enforcement. And man, it was the Wild West. Visa and income considerations aside, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live?
I would like to live. Wow. I have listened to a bunch of your interviews, and it seems like a lot of people say I'd live right where I live.
Yeah.
I really like our house, and I really like our neighborhood, and I'm really happy that we raised our kids here. Because I know change, isn't always great. Part of me says I just would stay right here. I just prefer not to have a mortgage. But there are some beautiful little cities that I've seen in Northern California, way north of San Francisco, near the Oregon border, that I would like to live. I think it would be fun. But it wouldn't be a fancy house. It would be a really small house with a great view. So let's say maybe Half Moon Bay, California.
Yeah.
And I would just take a plot of land on a hill overlooking the ocean with a nice breeze, and then I would just plop a little tiny house on there, and lots of glass.
Yeah.
That would be great. Either that or amongst the redwoods, I would love, as long as they don't catch on fire all the time. So, price no object and fire not an object. Or I'd live maybe in Mammoth Lakes, California.
Yeah.
At the foot of the Sierra Nevadas. I love that area.
So, do you have a perfect musical instrument? Or an ideal musical instrument, and if so, do you already own it or not?
I have a 1974 Electra jazz copy that I bought in 1985 for $50 in Rockford. It's my favorite instrument, and I've been playing it since 1985 with some modifications done to it over the years, but it's essentially untouched. And, man, I love that thing. And it's the bass I play on almost every song I've ever played a bass on since 1985. So it's on hundreds and hundreds of songs. It's on every Louis Fair song that I played bass on.
Yeah.
And I use semi-flat wounds, and I change the strings once every 4 or 5 years. And it's a mutt, and it's beat up, and I'm looking at it right now. It's got Leroy Bach's autograph on the headstock, and it's got Mavis Staples' autograph on the headstock, and it's got fluorescent orange paint that's left over from when I painted the entire bass orange, including the fretboard.
Oh my gosh!
And it's a mess. I put a ton of money into straightening the neck out, but and I dropped in some 68 jazz pickups. in the 80s, late 80s, maybe early 90s. And then it's got a badass bridge that I had put on, 20 years ago probably. I love that thing, and I play it all the time. Perfect. Man,
there's an Electra ES335 copy on like Facebook Marketplace here, and I was kind of eye fucking it earlier. I was like, I wonder if that's a good guitar.
So Electra is a Japanese company, and they made these knockoffs throughout the late 60s into the early 80s.
Yeah.
And the one that I've got, I guess in pristine shape, can run almost a couple $1,000s now.
Wow.
Because because they're actually really good quality. I bought it for $50 because the guy that ran the music store pawn shop was a friend of mine, and a guy had brought this bass in for repair and then never come to pick it up. And it had been sitting there for about a year, and I'm like, how much for it? And he said, $50 in repair. So how about $50?
Wow.
Best $50 ever spent.
Now, would it be any trouble if you to just take a cell phone photo of that when we're done and send it to me? I kind of want to see it.
Yeah.
I'd be in your debt. It sounds like a beautiful instrument.
It's fucking awesome. It used to have fake mustaches on it. So we when I say we, I mean Casey Rice and I produced Ben Lee's first album. He's an Australian singer-songwriter.
Yeah, from Noise Addict, right?
Well, it was the first album was a solo album. It was just Ben Lee, but he was in the band Noise Addict, which I produced like a year later. So he came to Chicago to make a record with me and Casey, and then album came out a year later, and we put together a little touring band for the States and for Australia. And so it was Rebecca Gates on guitar, Ben on guitar and vocals, me on drums, and Casey played my electric bass. And Casey just thought it'd be really fun to wear a mustache every night. And every night after the set, he would take the mustache, or if the sweat made the mustache fall off, and he would put it on the bass. So for decades, there were these rotting mustaches that if they'd fall off, I would super glue them back onto the bass,
Hilarious.
But there were probably like a dozen varying sized fake mustaches attached to the front of this bass. And the last one fell off maybe 10 years ago.
What kit did you play on that gig? Do you remember?
With Ben?
Yeah.
I think we rented a bunch. We hired Backline for like the East Coast tour. I think it was I probably rented Ludwig most of the time.
Yeah.
Ludwig 20.
Is there an instrument you've lost from theft or pawn or disaster of some kind that you would desperately wish you could have back?
I'm not really particular about gear. So, instruments. I haven't really sold a lot of my instruments. I have all my saxophones. I sold my baritone saxophone. It was a Selmer Mark VI, 1962, I think. And I wish I still had my baritone. I'm not really playing saxophone that much now, but I have a feeling that if I would have had the baritone, I might have gravitated to that more. And it was a lovely instrument, and then I made a good profit off of it when I sold it. I think it's still hanging in a jazz club in Tokyo. There was a club in Tokyo that was opening up, and they wanted to have they'd have a picture of Jerry Mulligan, who's a baritone, cool jazz, famous musician. It was like a framed portrait of Jerry Mulligan playing baritone sax. and they needed to have, or they wanted to have, the same model saxophone like on display behind glass, like mounted on the wall. And that's where that went. And so they paid a lot of money to make sure that they got one that was the correct vintage. I haven't seen it. They sent me a photograph of it in the early '90s, I guess it was. But I wouldn't mind having that back. But I don't really think about it that much. I have what I have, and I'm not somebody who gets rid of stuff easily, even if I don't use it. I kind of hang on. I don't have a lot of it either. I don't have 20 guitars and 10 basses. I have 2 basses and maybe half a dozen guitars, and I'm getting one more made for me, and I think I'm going to be all done with needing guitars. I have all my bases covered with the guitars I have. And with the audio gear, I've owned some really great consoles that I no longer own, but I don't regret getting rid of them.
Yeah. I really love baritone sax.
Why?
Because I like Fela Kuti a lot, and I like all of daptone shit a lot, and baritone is so evocative.
Yeah.
You just don't meet that many Barry players. So if you could be a guest artist with any performer and do one song live, who would it be, and what would the song be?
Well, I'd have to be bass or drums with David Bowie playing Heroes.
Man, that's a good one. Do you know Sterling?
No, I don't.
He's a good guy. Super nice guy.
Man, what a great song. And the way that song continues to build and build and build. And it just roars at the end. He's literally roaring, screaming, the lyrics out. That's who I want to be sideman for.
Yeah. If you could imagine a taxi that can go anywhere, and you got the taxi and you said to the driver, "Hey man, take me home." Where is home?
Right here. Right here, where my wife and kids are.
Yeah.
Especially in 2020.
Yeah. Fuck.
I like my house. I like my neighborhood. I like my city. I love the state that I live in. I moved here by choice. And we chose to raise our kids in Los Angeles. And where I come from, a lot of my family and friends who still live in Illinois think you got to be an idiot to raise your kid in a city like Los Angeles. And they're just wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I pine for California because I just want this thing to be over, and we don't really go do stuff because other kids aren't wearing masks and it's not safe.
Wow. That's intense.
Yeah.
I can't imagine living in a different city right now. I'm just grateful that we've hung in a city that is as expensive as LA is, and we've made sacrifices, and there are downsides to every place that you can choose to live, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm aware of that. But having lived in medium-sized cities and really small cities, really small, and also really big cities, it's really apparent to me that I like big cities. I like them. I like the pluses a lot more than the pluses that you get in rural or small town living. Not that I wouldn't live in a small city again, but it's going to be a very specific place if I move from Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But, there's just a lot about this specific city that I like, and I just sort of shrug at, the very frequent complaints about the city. And I also find that a lot of the people that I talk to that, think that I'm nuts for living in Los Angeles have either never been here or they've just been to LAX on their way to somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or they showed up to go to Disneyland, and they might have gone to Hollywood and Highlands and seen the Walk of the Stars and gone to the Chinese Theater, and that's if that's the only thing that you saw of Los Angeles, well then your opinion really doesn't matter much to me. Yeah. I didn't move out here without knowing it pretty well before I came here. I was out here a lot with bands I was touring with, or for work, and I'd come out to record a band, for a week or maybe a couple of months or half a year. Some years, fell in love with it, and I don't feel any less strong about Los Angeles than I did when I first moved here. It's almost daily. I'm stopping at some point and going, wow, I like it here. And it's almost always because of the view, the weather, it's a easy place to live when it comes to that. But it is expensive. It's got its downsides. It's a big city. So there's a homeless situation, there's pollution, and there's crime, and there's noise, and there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of traffic. And if you don't like any of those things, then you probably won't like any big city. Some people just can't abide by, this much concrete or noise or heat. I mean, there's all kinds of things that will get on your nerves, but millions of people do like it. And they feel the same way about Chicago, New York, and Seattle, and London, and Singapore, and it's not a coincidence that I love all those cities as well.
Yeah.
And, man, I'd live in London in a heartbeat, man. I love that city. What a cool town.
Yeah.
Tokyo, same. It's really cool. But, I mean, I have a feeling that if you don't like Los Angeles, you probably wouldn't want to live in any of those cities either.
Yeah. And
that's fine. That's okay. It's like it's not making a judgment. It's not me doing the complaining, but I don't get really defensive about Los Angeles because I'm just, in some ways, I'm kind of happy when people don't like it because fewer people will move here.
Yeah. Who is that? George Bernard Shaw, the quote, "A man who's bored with London is bored with life." I can't remember.
Oh, wow. That's good.
I love that quote.
That may be the greatest city ever, I think. It's been around thousands of years at this point.
Yeah. Right? Well, man, this has been fucking amazing, and I'm really grateful you were able to do it.
Thank you for inviting me to do it, and for putting up with my diarrhea of the mouth. I talk so much.
It's gonna be so good. There's some really good shit there. I gotta admit, I'm getting kind of fond of these two-part interviews because it allows me to kind of break things up a little and make them more digestible chunks. But I think that's one of my favorite interviews I've done this year. Really, really glad to talk to Brad. If you want to check out a bunch of his work, go to bradwoodmusic.com. There's songs from tons of artists that he's worked with there, and it's all consistently amazing work. Great sounding stuff, great songs. bradwoodmusic.com. I want to once again thank Jake Kreger. He's the sort of de facto producer of the show. He sends me show notes after every show. We talk on the phone 4 or 5 times a week. He was the creator and maintainer of the Crash and Ride YouTube channel. He's my right-hand man. He's the best dude. He has helped me make this show better from the beginning. He was, after all, the first guest, and ever since then he's been like, I think the music might be a little loud there, man. I think you might need to make that a little longer, a little shorter, or whatever. If the show is better now than it was the first time you heard it, that's all due to Jake. Thanks, Jake. I want to thank Gene Wolfick and the band The Powder Room. All the music that you hear on today's episode is by the band The Powder Room. You can hear more of their music at thepowderroom.bandcamp.com. They're an amazing band. I was a member for one record. That record was called Lucky. Most of these songs, though, come from the record Curtains, which is their first album. You can check it out at thepowderroom.bandcamp.com. So if you're a noise rock fan and you've been following Powder Room for a couple of years, you might be surprised to find out that Erica Strout from the incredible noise rock band Motherfucker and Gene Wolford from the band The Powder Room have a new collaboration called Dream Tent. And it is not noise rock. It's this amazing, ethereal, synth-driven, trance-like music. It's so gorgeous. They're just now putting out a full-length record. Go to dreamtent.bandcamp.com, dreamtent.bandcamp.com, and check it out. It's definitely worth your time. Hey, if you want to contact the show, hit me up at crashandride@protonmail.com. That email is encrypted. It's private. Nobody reads it but me. I will never violate your anonymity without your express permission. crashandride@protonmail.com. Always interested to hear from new guests or suggestions for guests, particularly women or people of color, because, historically this show has relied very heavily on white guys with guitars because I'm a white guy that plays drums. So, that's who I know. I'm always interested in getting new and different stories out there. So crashandride@protonmail.com. I hope you're hanging in there. I hope you're able to cope with the incredible ambiguity of the time that we live in. I hope that you've got a support system. Reach out if you need me to help you plug in with a local mental health network or something like that. I'm more than happy to help. But in the meantime, until we speak again, take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. Ask for help if you need it. If you can find a way to safely see live music, try to see some music. Support your favorite band, and remember, loud guitars save lives.